Please be seated. Claire will not be here today. I'll be chairing the meeting. Roll call.
And for the record, our Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Council Members Cole, Grego, and Swanson. Absent for the record is Mayor Fortier.
And she is attending a regional plan update all day today with TRPA, which is very important and critical to this city and, of course, to the basin. So, opening statement by the city clerk regarding meeting procedures and conduct. Susie?
Good morning and welcome to the regular City Council meeting of Tuesday, March 20th. Before we proceed, as a courtesy to others and to limit interference with our audio and video broadcast equipment, please silence or turn off all cell phones, pagers, and any other type of communication devices. If you are in need of an assisted listening device, please make a request to the city clerk. We encourage and welcome public participation. If you wish to speak on an item listed on the agenda, please complete one of the yellow speaker comment forms, which are located in the back of the council chambers on the small podium. Please indicate the item that you wish to speak on and provide it to the city clerk or assistant city clerk Ellen Palazzo prior to the item being heard. Public communication items are limited to 3 minutes, and this is the time for members of the public to address the city council on items not listed on the agenda. Please note, however, in accordance with the Brown Act, the city council cannot deliberate or vote on any matter raised under public communications. Comments for all other scheduled agenda items are limited to 5 minutes. The city clerk will use the meeting timer, which will be posted on the whiteboard to the left of the podium. When you are called upon to speak, please come forward to the podium, state your name clearly for the record, and we respectfully ask that you keep your comments concise, and once the timer ends, to please be seated. The City Council asks that respect be shown to the council, city staff, and members of the audience, and asks that you please refrain from clapping, booing, or shouts of approval or disagreement during the meeting.
Thank you. Could you repeat that? All right. This is an opportunity for public comments, as the city clerk said, for items not listed on the agenda, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. We can do brief comments, but we can't discuss it or vote on it. Anyone in the public wants to talk about anything on non-agenda items, please come forward. Okay, seeing none. City Commission reports and council member assignments to boards, committees, and commission reports. Angela?
We have an item on today's agenda that's reflective of the action taken last week at the California Tahoe Conservancy Board meeting, at which they authorized for their portion to go ahead with their proposed land swap of critical properties. Further, I now confine my longer comments inside the land swap issue. Some comments and questions have come up related to the fact that for the first time in, if ever or in a long while, CTC is looking at getting some of the property off its rolls and potentially selling some properties. And there's some concern out in the public about whether or not that's really consistent with the role of CTC. And I'll go into that in more detail during the discussion because it's relevant there. But I did want to alert the public to the fact that we are very cognizant of that issue. Secondly, I spent most of last week in Washington, D.C. as part of the lobbying group looking at transportation funding. It was good to be there. It was very helpful for the city to be part of the coalition. Otherwise, we'd have been represented primarily by private sector interests, so it was good to be a well-rounded group. We spoke with 7 legislative delegates that represented us, and then had communications into the Federal Highways and Transportation Department. Did as much as we could do to try to secure front-end loading on how to make a successful Tiger 4 application, which is the funding for us for the Loop Road, a $60 million project. We also secured commitments for letters of support. It was also the first time we had met in Washington with staff in longer than anyone could remember. Tom, you may have been the last one that was there, what, 10 years ago? Yeah.
Before there was highways.
Yeah. So before there was ours. So that was an important piece that's continuing to go on. And you never know how you're going to last, but we learned a lot that we wouldn't have known or been able to do to make this application strong. While there are no earmarks, there are now such things as letter marks, which means when they're oversubscribed in the first round, if you don't have letters from your congressional delegation, particularly on the Senate side, you're tossed out. So we learned that that was an important piece of keeping us in the running, at least for consideration as they're really drilling down.
Bruce?
Well, I'm attending the committees I've been assigned to. There's nothing to report.
Hal? And the only report I have is I had a JPA meeting last Monday for Cal Tahoe Ambulance Service, and I also attended a Chamber of Commerce meeting last Thursday, so that's all I got to report. Okay, this time we have a presentation, a 15-minute presentation, proposal by the Bike Park Association to pursue planning and implementation of a proposed bike park in the Bijou Community Park. No action will be taken. Stan?
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, Stan Shear, Community Services Director for the record. What we have today is a presentation from two local bike associations for the creation of a bike park in Bijou Park. Staff has been working with both groups for quite a while on a conceptual design for the improvements. We really feel like this is not only a sound investment in our community as far as a park amenity, but in addition to that, it will create another special event venue for us. So with that, I'd like to introduce Garrett Villanueva, who's going to make a presentation to you this morning.
Thank you, Stan. Garrett, welcome.
Thank you.
And happy first day of spring.
Yeah, thank you. It almost feels like it. Okay, let me pull this up here. Let's see. Okay, there we go. All right, thank you for taking the time to hear my presentation. It's about 15 minutes, and I'm going to run through it kind of quick because we've got a lot of pictures to show you. So what we've been working on is a bike park proposal at Bijou Community Park on a 4-acre parcel. So we're comprised of two different groups, the Tahoe Area Mountain Bike Association and the South Lake Tahoe BMX Association. Has members in both groups that are interested in developing this bike path proposal. So we've teamed up and we're working on forming the Bike Park Association to make this thing happen. There's three core members right now that are representing this project: myself, Lauren Tomaselli, and Ben Fish. This slide is actually a little bit outdated, but the reason we're here is to present this to the council for your understanding of what we're trying to achieve, which is a 4-acre bike park at Bijou Park. So real quickly, we want to run through some slides showing you what is a bike park. And the slides kind of speak for themselves, but I'll go into some details of what this serves as. And one of the best examples we can see out there is the Valmont Bike Park in Boulder, Colorado, which is a really well-developed bike park, and it's got, in particular, it's got excellent signing, which you'll see throughout this presentation. But you can see in this photo, this is kind of the main reception area of the bike park, and it's, you know, there's like 30 some odd people, all different shapes and sizes, even spectators at the bike parks. It's heavily used. It's just recently been opened. This slide is showing a dual slalom course. So bike park is a place where you can have both formal competitive events and friendly competition as well. Here's a slide, just a location map of Bijou Park. And you can't really see it very well, but on the lower right side of the screen there, that's the location of the Lake Tahoe Greenway bike path, which has recently been approved and is planned to be constructed by the California Tahoe Conservancy. So this would be located directly adjacent to the Greenway. It's close to the college. It's centrally located. We've got a schematic of what the bike park could look like, and there's several different elements. The first phase we're proposing is the pump track and the kids zone. And I'll go into detail of what those would look like. So here's a picture of a pump track. This is kind of a nice-sized pump track. Pretty easy to construct, very highly used. They're excellent for providing skill building, safe place for kids and adults to get better at bike handling skills. And in particular, a pump track, the reason it's called a pump track is because when you get good at a pump track, you don't actually pedal on a pump track. You push and pull your bike to get through the bumps and not pedal, although most of us pedal. Here's some more examples of pump tracks. One of them, the one on the right, is actually under construction. You can see some hand tools in the background. So it's mostly hand-shaped, kind of piled with equipment and then hand shaped, so they're very easy to construct, and the little guy in the red helmet just can't wait for it to be done. More pictures of pump tracks. This one's at Vhat again. Again, you'll notice the signing is really top-notch. And this is one of my favorite slides. You're seeing 3 generations represented in this slide. So it's definitely a family-friendly type of facility. Again, in Vhat, this is their tot track. This would be a component of a kid zone. And in this picture, you're not really seeing the tot track so much. You're seeing some bike racks. There's a rock that is placed so that people can actually ride over it. And so these are elements that are incorporated into the entire bike park to make it fun and interesting and a place where people want to congregate. And in the case of South Lake Tahoe, we have, as you all likely know, a really fantastic trails here in Tahoe, and a big draw for our visitors is coming up here to be able to bike. What we don't have is a hub. We don't have that central location where people gather, meet, and then conduct their biking activities from there. This slide's interesting too, I think, because this is a baseball field, and they simply lay out these features, and it's a bike park. So in this case, it's kind of adapting an existing space to use it as a bike park as well. And you can't really see it very well on the screen, but in the background, there's about 3 times as many spectators as there are bikers in this picture, which I think is kind of interesting. And that's a good shot too. The guy's a little bit proud of his Strider. That bike on the left is a Strider. It doesn't have pedals. It's kind of a modern way kids are learning how to ride their bikes without training wheels, and more kids zone stuff. So the second park, so phase 1 we would construct first. That's why it's phase 1. Ideally we would be able to start on it this summer. However, we'll get through the approval process first. Phase 2 would come second. Phase 2 includes the BMX track and a skill zone. We currently have a BMX track, as you know, which is very successful, located over at El Tahoe School. Actually, the back of the middle school between El Tahoe School. And this is a picture of some sponsored professional riders, a lot of spectators at BMX races. BMX races or BMXing in general is growing. It's booming right now. We're seeing a lot of more participation in recent years. So it's a growing sport at this time. And so we see these kids coming in, and for probably the next 5 to 10 years, I think we're going to see kind of a plug of BMX riders coming through. So it's got a lot of popularity right now. This is a picture of our BMX track right here at South Lake Tahoe. A bunch of riders. Another picture of the spectator area, and we do have riders that go and compete at national race events and that are nationally ranked from our track. Our BMX track is, it's interesting. It's not a big track. However, I've traveled around to the Southwest a little bit to different BMX tracks, and nothing quite matches the camaraderie and the family feeling we have at our BMX track. It's really a spectacular facility. The new BMX track, before I go on to phase 3, would be a little bit bigger, and it would have the capacity to draw larger events like national races. So the venue is a little bit bigger, a little more developed. The last element would be a slopestyle type course and an advanced skill zone. And I apologize for kind of blasting through these slides. I've got a lot of pictures and not too much time, so I'm going kind of fast. Just an example of some advanced type skills. I like this photo because if you look through the front wheel, you can see her friend is giving her a spot so that if she falls, she's not going to hurt herself. And these are the kinds of things that the signs instruct people to do. If you're uncomfortable with trying this for the first time, have some of your friends spot you, so if you fall, you're not going to dislocate your shoulder. In this slide, we're seeing what's called progression, which is a really important aspect of risk management for any facility. But for the bike park, you can go off the small jumps, or as you get more comfortable, you can start to ramp up and try the harder jumps. So it gives folks a choice and allows them to develop their skills. This is kind of an overview picture of a slopestyle course at Vhat Park, and more examples of slopestyle courses. And one last example. Oh, two more examples. This is a log ride, just another. The types and features that we could put into the skills parks are really up to our imaginations, although they will all be designed in detail. And this is one of my, I really like this one. This one's just really aesthetic and looks super fun. And that's at Vhat Park as well. Here's an example of some signs. A lot of these are from Vhat Park. This sign is a donor sign. Just for fun, I added up kind of what was represented in the sign in dollars, and it's about $450,000, which is not so different what we anticipated a park would cost in total for here at South Lake Tahoe. Again, more signs. This is an extremely important aspect of risk management, is to have good signing, set expectations, let people know how challenging different features are, and guide them to the right areas, and establish several rules so people know how to use the area. Again, really spectacular signs. And we do, I would hope to emulate what they've done at Vhat as far as, in particular with their signing, because it is so good. Trail conditions, they have skills loop signs. Spectators. So we think that the bike park would have tremendous capacity to draw spectator events and organized events, and the site would be used as so. Just to give you an example of some of the events that I've been to, the Sea Otter Classic down in Monterey is an immense bike event. It's over the course of a week, and they draw thousands upon thousands of folks to that event. And the bike sponsors that come are pulling trailers filled with literally millions of dollars of equipment and bikes and cars and all kinds of stuff. It's I think the potential for a revenue-generating venue is very good with the bike park. Some of the costs, some of the needs would be 5 hours a week for maintenance activities from the city staff, as well as the existing utilities, connections to the existing utilities for watering and for electrical would be needed. And the total cost of construction is estimated very roughly at this point at $436,000. We do anticipate that we'll need to get a CEQA permit for this. A categorical exemption would be needed. And we would need a TRPA permit, which we're already working on the TRPA permit. We've got our site plan, coverage calcs, and we've been talking to them about that. We think a permit for Phase 1 is possible by June from TRPA. Benefits. We've got a bunch of benefits here. We do think, again, I'm kind of restating what I had already said, but there is tremendous potential for economic benefits, not only directly to like bike shops, but also for extending stays from our visitors in our community. This would just be another reason, especially if we build the quality of bike park that we envision. We feel people would choose to come here even to use our bike park and even extend their stays on either end of a vacation, because our bike park would be of that caliber and quality. This, again, would be a facility that is rentable. The city could rent it out for different venues, music, bikes, beer. That kind of seems to be a pretty popular theme among the bikers. It provides a safe place, and this is, in my mind, this is one of the most important elements of the potential bike park, is just providing a safe place for people to learn, for kids to play and be outdoors on their bikes. It would promote use of mode share, bicycle use as a mode share, and I think this statistic is kind of astounding. In Whistler, $34 million is generated by biking over a 3.5-month period in 2006. So that's very good. It would be very low maintenance, very easy to maintain, and there's a lot of buy-in. We know there's a lot of buy-in from the folks in our groups, TAMBA and South Lake Tahoe BMX, as well as other community members. I've had different community members approach me from time to time asking me, how would we go about building a bike park? And so here we are. We're trying to push it forward. So and that's been happening in various backyards and barbecues for about 3 years, these types of discussions. This does serve as attraction for folks of all ages. You know, we're seeing little kids that are just learning how to ride their bikes, all the way up to folks that you know are collecting their senior citizen benefits out there at the bike parks. And we feel that the bike park is very compatible with the other Bijou facilities that are in place. The bike park would not displace the Frisbee golf course whatsoever. And it would be located behind the playground. The one thing that it would potentially interrupt is the park course that's out there. However, in talking to city staff, that the park course is old, and that wasn't viewed as a loss necessarily. And the location is central. It's going to be right next to the Lake Tahoe Greenway, that's going to be the backbone of our developed trail system in the future. In the U.S., I'll just read this one. In the U.S., mountain biking generates $26 billion in annual economic activity. And then how much are we getting? Next steps, we are planning to submit a TRPA application. We are developing detailed design documents, which we're already working on with contracting that out. We're soliciting additional community support. And lastly, we hope to professionally build the phase 1 of the bike park as soon as we have the proper approvals. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I've watched biking in this town. My son is now 24, and he's been biking his whole life. I mean, and I go up there, and I don't think it's going to go away soon. I think the only economic benefit my son gave to it is to the orthopedist in town. But I do think that there's a lot of people coming here. You kind of answered my question. So you're pretty far along the process. I didn't realize you're that far along. So you've identified a site. You've worked with the Parks and Rec Commission, and you worked with our planning department. Mm-hmm. So they're all on board with using that site.
Yes.
And your next steps, how are you funding now? The application process isn't cheap either. So are you raising money as you're going?
We have a grant from Specialized, a $5,000 grant from Specialized Bicycle Company right now. We just applied for another grant from Bikes Beyond, and we're continuing to seek grants for funding. And in addition, we've got over 100 letters of support for donating materials and different things that we would need for the bike park.
And then are you an LLC or something? So you're doing this work on city property, but it's going to be city-owned, and you're going to have a contract to run it, or I guess you're still working out those details?
City-owned and city-operated is how what we understand at this point. And we have 2 nonprofit organizations that would form. One of those nonprofits would convert to become the Bike Park Association.
So you'll have an agreement with the city. You're raising money and improving the infrastructure of the city, so I'm sure you got to get some kind of an agreement ahead of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're our next step is to seek city approval in order to move forward from this point. Before we would,
you must have some city approval in order to have site plans done and go to the TRPA. Because
we have been working with city staff.
Okay. I'm curious about how we're going along without.
The way that we plan to do it is the city will give a license agreement, temporary license
Sarah Neer,
agreement.
could you state your name?
I'm sorry, thank you. Neera Feely, Deputy City Attorney. I've worked with Garrett and some other members of the nonprofit, as well as our Parks and Rec employees. The way we would do it is we would grant the nonprofit a temporary license agreement for construction purposes. And after the license agreement expires and the construction has been completed, the bike park would be a city, as Garrett said, run and operated bike park. And that would allow us to utilize the government immunities available for damages that arise on the property, including personal injury damages. The nonprofit would partner with the city to continue hosting events and potentially races and other temporary events, but the upkeep and maintenance would be the responsibility of the city, which was the 5 hours a week and utility obligations that you saw in there.
Similar to what we did with our skate park?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, it
Thank
sounds
you.
great to me.
Bruce? Angela?
Just, I think you've pretty well covered it, but want to understand one is, Garrett, well, is this an open area or is it locked off and enclosed? I'm thinking about the current BMX facility over by the school district, which for vandalism, my understanding is, and I'm looking at Lauren Tomaselli in the crowd, that it's been locked off at times. Isn't it shut so that there's protecting assets? So I'm wondering how, with this being moved into Bijou Park and its use expanded, is this going to be an open area, and are there worries about vandalism? And then my other question had to do with scheduling between uses of the nonprofit and then the general public. And either one of you can maybe help me with those couple of questions.
Lauren Tomaselli, founder and president, South Lake Tahoe BMX Association.
She knows a little bit about BMX parks.
Yeah, all great questions. The sanctioning body ensures tracks in a variety of conditions. Fencing a BMX track the way the current track is fenced is an option to the sanctioning agreement. Many tracks are built in public parks such as Bijou Park that allow usage, during regular park hours. Certainly fencing the BMX track does allow the operators to control the maintenance and keep up on maintenance and also really monitor the usage, but it's not necessary. So what is required in terms of fencing to be sanctioned and insured by the national sanctioning body is a 4-foot spectator fence that protects the spectators from the riders when they're on the track, and to protect from dogs or other things rolling onto the track that could interfere with the riding. But again, the location of the site that we've identified is in a highly visible area. It's a highly used area. It will inspire pretty much a self-monitoring of the activities there, and it'll inspire the stewardship from the the variety of riders that will be using the park. And what was the second question?
Had to do with scheduling hours and use of it, being, having those activities in a public park. How do you see, will that just be managed through the Parks and Rec staff as just like any other event?
Yeah, yes, it would. We would do scheduling just like we do on all our facilities and school district facilities.
You always want to look for that balance where you're encouraging all these kind of events and entrepreneurial uses, but also making sure we've got a good balance for access for our community members at large to be using this as an asset. 2 more questions just related to it, because this is a great idea. I'm so supportive of it. It's the right kind of idea, but I do want to make sure, as Hal was asking some questions around city approvals, mine is in the vetting of, because Bijou Park is very dear to many people and fought very hard to get it. In getting this use coming in, have we gone back to those appropriate user groups who are part of developing the community plan and then looking at the park to make sure that they are aware that this is a new phase in the life of Bijou Park?
We will. At this point, we're just trying to determine feasibility and whether or not there's the willingness to continue with the planning and implementation. So this is just the first step in the process.
So we'll do that. Hal, I know you've got a lot of history working with this, and that would be, it sounds like you're doing everything appropriately right now. I would just encourage making sure we keep that open dialogue going so that people understand the elements, including even the park course, which isn't the most used activity in the park, but to feel like something's not being discarded without a good public input process. So those cover most of my questions for it. It looks great, and seeing what's being based with Valmont. Oh, I had one last question. Coming from the school district, this looks like the way it's designed, it doesn't encourage any of our skateboarders to use any of the ramps, jumps, anything. Is that correct, that this design really will not encourage them to take that on too as part of their facilities?
Well, I personally think that more importantly, it does provide a venue for bicyclists in Bijou Park, and will take the bikers that are in the skate park and possibly causing, a hazard there, and giving them a facility that they can use that's appropriate to their sport. So, I think it's going to create a much, it's going to break those barriers and create a safer environment for both user groups. And then I would just like to say, and I know that you know, Angela, from the school district, that the site that we are on at Lake Tahoe is Lake Tahoe Unified School District property. We're the only sanctioned BMX track on public school property in the country, so they did something really unprecedented 10 years ago by approving that. But that site is identified as part of a master plan for their track and field amenities, and one day that license agreement will end when they're ready to move forward. So, you know, we've always known that site that we've been so successful at with the BMX track has been somewhat temporary, and it just fits right in with the other bike organizations' ideas of creating a more diverse bike park for a much wider range of bike users that live here and visit here.
So does this development allow the BMX facilities currently on the LTUSD property to be moved into Bijou as well? Is that all right? I'm not clear really then. Is it phase 3 when that facility that's currently on school district property will go into Bijou Park? Is that the plan?
That's
the plan, right?
phase 2, and
Oh,
yes,
it's phase
that's
2,
a plan. And then that site would be restored to its original condition, and where, you know, whatever the school district whenever they wanted to move forward with their plans, they could do so.
I can attest
Yeah.
you've been a good partner for the school district all these years.
Yeah.
Bruce?
Thanks, Angela.
Mechanically, will there be someone present all the time during all these activities? Because we have small children there, and we can try to assume the parents will be there, but that doesn't necessarily mean they will be. How will that work?
No, there will not be, the city will not be supervising the facility, and that's important to the management of it in order to make sure we can utilize our governmental immunities. At the events will be staffed at all times, but during open hours, it will not be supervised.
Will there be a requirement that children under a certain age have parents?
Yes, and there will be all sorts of rules and warnings that will provide the city the necessary protections as far as personal injury liabilities.
So the liability
are
side.
concerned. Yes.
Yeah, but I'm not worried about the liability side. I'm worried about injury to the children.
I'm sorry.
How do you
I am too, but
I know how do we monitor this so that there isn't
well,
little
perhaps
kids doing stupid things?
perhaps you two can speak to that, but I think this is.
I think it'd be real similar to how the skate park works right now, or the playground for that matter. I don't feel that the bike park in itself is inherently more dangerous than those other activities. And I think when we look at what's happening in other places, what you're suggesting is exactly what they're doing. They're saying, look, if you're under this age, you know, you're not going to you have to have your parents to be here, as well as there's going to be other requirements as well, as wear a helmet, you know, those types of things.
But if there's no one there, who's going to insist on the helmet? Who's going to insist that the parents be present? Because it is, you know, I don't say it's not more dangerous, but because you're dealing with, you know, bicycles and they are more mechanical, that, you know, there might be a greater chance of injury. I'm just wondering whether someone should be watching the situation.
Stan, you had a comment?
Yeah, I did. Garrett was correct in his comparison to the skate park. It's the same philosophy, and the key to liability and safety is the signage that he touched on early in his presentation. If we clearly articulate the risk, which when Garrett was showing this, you saw different varying degrees of difficulty, then that's how we're going to protect the kids, just through education and the signage. But like Nira mentioned, there aren't many like facilities in the country that actually staff these type of facilities. And a playground inherently has the same degree of risk as a skate park or a bike park.
And driving with Bruce, you have an inherent risk too, trust me.
And
You answered my question on liability. The other one is the timing again. You're looking for June of this year?
Yeah.
If we can get our approvals completed, yeah, we are prepared to construct phase 1 this summer.
And have it open by this summer then?
Mm-hmm. That's the goal.
I think
yes.
between this and the Go Ape Adventure Park, we're going to have some great activities for locals and visitors here if we get the Go Ape project going too out here at the airport. Lauren, you had another comment?
Yeah, I just want to address Mr. Grego's concerns, and that is with The current BMX track, we're there and staffed and open and supervise that facility 2 days a week throughout the summer, 2 to 3 days a week. And everyone who walks in that gate is required to have safety gear on that's mandated by the sanctioning body that provides the insurance 24/7, 365 days a year for that site. That alone educates riders, and it develops a respect for safety and wearing the gear from a very young age. So the fact that we would be there holding these regularly scheduled events and practices where the facility will be staffed and supervised more than at least 2 days a week, if not more, will help with educating the public on proper use of safety gear.
Yeah, I think, Lauren, your second BMX bike is where the ice skating rink is now, right? I remember when you started that one, and then we kicked you out of there.
Yeah.
So you've been moved around a lot.
Well, we've been moved around twice. We've rebuilt the track 3 times, and yes, because the city took a chance and believed that we had a program that would be beneficial to the community. We had the opportunity to demonstrate the sport back in 2000, thanks to the city council at that time, who allowed us to do that, and definitely proved to the community that it was worthwhile, and they supported it, and we've been successful for the last 10 years where we are now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Just one last comment for Bruce. As a mother whose son blew out the front of his mouth on Hal's property, where the kids have that illegal jump that they do, I would much rather have had him on where you're 10 years old and you tell your parents you're going to be in one place and you're somewhere else, to have been on a course like this instead of what the kids were building that was illegal and poorly put together, and they go flying around. You can't prevent accidents. You have to trust parents are going to be responsible for their kids. But there is that age, and it's that squirrely 10 to 13-year-old boys bunch I'm really specifically looking at. You've got it. If they have a safe place, I'd rather have that and get so Hal doesn't have the nuisance on his property anymore.
You spell it C-O-L-E. All right. Thank you very much. Great presentation. Look forward to that. It'll be another great addition to our recreation facilities in town. So. All right, next one is adoption of the regular and consent agenda. Is there any changes, additions, or deletions? City Attorney?
We need to pull number 5. We received a bid protest.
Okay, and City Clerk?
No changes other than number 5 being pulled.
Okay, City Manager?
No changes.
I just had one request by Claire. She wanted us to pull because she wants to participate in the closed session on the City Manager's annual performance evaluation. Item C under closed session, so we'll pull that for future discussion. She wants to be here for that. All right, so item 5 is pulled. Any city council members want to pull anything? Angela?
No.
Bruce?
No.
Hal?
So we're going to continue the performance evaluation, right?
That's correct, yeah. And I have nothing to pull. The chair will entertain a motion.
I move to adopt the regular and consent agenda with the changes discussed.
Second.
Move to second it. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, abstentions, so carried. Okay, the first one we pulled, how do I reset this, or do you do that, Susie? Okay. Item 5 was pulled, and this is a formal bid from Recycle Tahoe Custom Combination Rubbish Recycling Containers, and the recommendation is award bid to Carson Valley Welding in the amount of $158,103.19. Is there a staff presentation?
I was going to make some quick comments, and then Gary O'Neill is going to make the staff presentation. And I was just going to discuss it here just briefly here. The city did solicit the bids for 200 rubbish recycling containers on January 19th, with the bid closing on February 14th. 9 bids were received, with staff recommending that Carson Valley Welding be awarded the contract as the lowest responsible bidder. 2 other bidders, Tahoe Bear Box, the 6th lowest bidder, and Tahoe Bear Saver, the 7th lowest bidder, have protested the award of the contract to Carson Valley Welding, based primarily on their belief that the proposed design is not vandal-proof or animal-resistant as required by the bid specifications. They've also raised trademark issues, which they will address. It is their belief that only the Bear Saver CE232 meet the specifications for the bid. Just as a background, this bid is not a public works project. It is bid through the Government Code 54201, which requires cities to adopt policies and procedures, including bidding specifications, governing the purchases and supplies of equipment by cities. So this is an equipment purchase versus a public works contract, which is generally a construction project where we're actually constructing or building something or landscaping or maintaining something. And so that's how it's different. So instead of being under public contracts code like we were in those cases, we're under the government code, which gives us broad discretions pursuant to the policies that we adopt. The city has adopted administrative regulations. Most recently, they were revised in March of 2009. Section 6-17, which is included in your packet of the administrative regulations, allows anyone no later than 72 hours prior to the bid opening to protest the issues concerning the specifications or the bid procedure. In this case, we received no bid protest prior to the bid opening. After the bid opening, anyone may protest some aspect of the procurement that only becomes evident after the bid opening. The protest must be filed within 5 working days after the city notifies all bidders of their contract award decisions. Following an adverse decision by the purchasing manager, the protester may contact the city clerk within 5 working days to have their protest heard by the city council. And that is why we are here today. The city's council's decision is final and binding on all the parties. In this case, I've also given you sections 6-17 through 6-13 through 17 that address the awarding of a contract for supplies and equipment. And Gary O'Neill will give you a staff report on the bids and some of the background information on the specifications.
And I see here in the staff report, we're talking 225, not 200, is that correct?
I think it was revised. Gary will address it.
And just for public's information, the low bid was per unit was $689.21, and the high bid was $1,481.56, and a whole bunch of in-betweens.
Right.
So, Gary?
Yes, Gary O'Neill, buyer for the city. I can assist with the information and how the bid process was carried out. I might have to refer to Stan Shearer on some of the information about the grants and the actual program itself. This is actually the second bid. The first bid that we went out early in January, there were some schematic drawings that were furnished by the Parks and Rec Department that were included in that in the first original bid. And at that time, Bear Saver did comment that those were proprietary trademark designs. And after that, I learned that information. We canceled that bid. We rebid by pulling the schematic drawings. One of the local iron shop vendors was a little bit disappointed in that. He wanted to have schematic drawings to work from and did not submit a bid. So we left it a little bit open-ended in that aspect. We also added Section 4 at Patrick's suggestion, which holds the city harmless. It indemnifies the city against trademark and copyright infringements. We received 9 proposals, or 9 bids from 9 various companies, and I checked out Carson Valley Welding. They seem to be the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. The references were good, got very good references. The wildlife people that were used as a reference said that their bear boxes work to prevent wildlife from coming in. And I also visited the site of Carson Valley Welding in Carson City on Saturday, a couple Saturdays ago, was impressed with their operation. This is not something they're putting together in their garage. This is what they do, welding and power coating. And at that time, we went ahead and put together the staff report so that we could be here today. On Friday, we received a bid protest from Bear Saver and Tahoe Bear Box. And unless you have any specific questions of me, Patrick, I'm not sure of the procedure. At this time, Randy is here from Bear Saver, and I believe he would like to speak to the council on some issues. We also have Don here and his attorney that can, from Carson Valley Welding, that can address some of the concerns that they have. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time for the council. I know that you're busy, but I do want to answer the questions. Let me know what you need to know.
Okay, Hal has a question. And then
Just before I hear from the successful bidder and the protesters, I just want to get a couple of things clear. Regarding the trademark, Patrick, are you confident that we, by not giving any schematics or design criteria, that we now are free from any trademark claims against the solicitation of this product?
I am confident that we are free from it, and we're also going to get an indemnification from Carson Valley.
So then the trademark issue, should we award it to one or the other, and if somebody felt that they were infringed upon, they would go, it wouldn't be between them and the city, between them and the other vendor. It seemed like one of the protests was whether or not the low bidder was truly bear-proof. What criteria did we have in our bid specs regarding how we define bear-proof?
It was relatively open-ended. We left it up to the actual submitter to show how their product is bear-proof.
Then who on the city said, okay, this meets our criteria of being bear-proof?
That's a good question. Greg Ross is the actual project manager for the Parks and Rec Department.
Okay, so it sounds to me like that's going to be one of the issues,
Okay.
and that may be somewhat subjective. So, I guess.
Well,
we'll
it
leave
is. It is subjective to make it 100% animal proof.
We didn't put some-
you can't put
we didn't put
anything
some honey
inside.
in it and have the bears try to get in it or anything.
Right.
But then,
Don from Carson Valley Welding might be able to address that issue.
then how did you handle the revised specifications that were issued after the closing of the bids? Did you tell everyone?
That's actually part of the staff report. We've gone from
read it
200
here.
to 225 as a quantity.
But
Greg
you
Ross
changed the grade of steel and
and the grade of steel has been changed also. That actually came about from Bear Saver, who recommended galvannealed steel. I'm learning a little bit more about metal now. They recommended that as a better product. We did not specify that specifically in the bids. We left it kind of open-ended again, 12 to 14 gauge non-corrosive steel.
So I'm a little.
There's all kind of
I got a little
grades there.
gun shy when we changed specs after the closing of the bids.
Okay.
And so I'm just curious how it was handled this time. So we got all our bids, then all the vendors were saying we want a revised bid or an upgrade or an add-on given this. How did we handle that?
No, Bear Saver recommended an
One
improved
of the
grade of
vendors
steel.
recommended something.
One of the vendors recommended this. It did not change the ranking of the bids.
But okay, one vendor recommended it, and then did you contact all the other vendors, say this is what we want?
No, I contacted the lowest vendor
Just the lowest vendor?
to discuss the materials. I'm kind of leaving it up to them as far as
So
the metal
you didn't
materials.
offer it to all the vendors as an upgrade to see if it changed their prices. You just went to the lowest vendor and asked him.
Correct,
Okay.
because it did not change the bid rankings. We've got a timeline on the grant. The grant ends at the end of May, so
Timelines scare me. We were under
Yeah.
timeline last time. I want
Yeah.
to do this right and not
Yeah.
the timeline. So you're assuming that it wouldn't affected the other bidders by giving them the upgrade. You just gave it to the lower vendor and say how much would it cost extra to bring this upgrade, but you didn't give it to all the vendors to look at again.
that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's clarify. So when was the change made in the galvanized steel? It was before or after the
It was
bid closing?
after the closing. Yes,
The bid closing.
after the bid closing.
Okay.
The additional cost did not affect who was the lowest bidder. So,
I just want to ask, following up on Hal's comment, on attachment 1, the technical specifications, this was the basis for the evaluation of what made something bear-proof? That all of them were asked to conform to? Is that my understanding?
are you referring to?
Attachment 1 in the technical
Okay.
specifications on page 4, the
Okay.
council item, that says, containers shall limit the potential for non-recyclables to end up in the recycled waste stream and must meet the following specifications, and it goes A through U.
That is correct.
That was all the level of detail you went to for
That is correct.
any of them to do this. And then M was the one that was the galvanization or the steel requirement.
Correct. M was the specification for the material to be used.
All right. And then just a point of process. I understand how changes can happen when you have a project. I'm concerned about to follow up again on what Hal was bringing up, that it's done either not a bid addenda or not after the contract's been awarded. At some point, once the contract's awarded, if there's a change, you can make a contract amendment. That seems a cleaner, more logical way to approach it than to make this interim change just as a process issue. So I would throw that out just to ask maybe that as a question, or are we doing best practices in looking at this?
Okay.
Because it does trouble me at the timing of when this happens. I understand you're saying that by amending their bid, the low bidder did not lose their place, but it's an irregularity in the bidding process that I'm a little uncomfortable with.
Okay.
Bruce, you have a question? The comment I had is, Is there any manufacturer that you can buy this off the shelf? Do we have to have these custom made?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
In all this recycling world and everything that's going on in the green world, there's nobody makes them off the shelf.
Stan, for you?
There are manufacturers that do so.
Have we looked at those?
We have. A lot of the reason that the specs were written the way they were is because we have actually had some experience with some of these vendors historically, and we haven't had a problem with the product.
Okay. And then the question I have again back for the city attorney, are you comfortable, and I am not comfortable when we change specs after the fact. Are you comfortable with this bid process and with the change after the bid was issued, from a legal perspective and defensive?
I am comfortable because it doesn't change the bid order in this case. Normally what we do is we'd award the bid and then we'd make a change order. But I am comfortable knowing in advance that it will need to be galvanized
And
metal.
so, and not letting the other bidders know, just the one bidder.
It's because it does not change the bid order in this case.
Change the cost.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Gary.
Okay. And Patrick, what order do you want to hear, from the bid
Well,
protester or the?
Well, it's up to the council, but I would
Okay.
start with Carson Valley. And
Okay.
then
Yeah. Angela had another quick question.
I have one more
Okay.
question. Just the last piece. I don't think I'm seeing in here what is the changed bid from Carson Valley? Is it that they went from 639? Yeah,
It's-
if you're saying it didn't change it, I'm not seeing the paper trail that goes from their original bid to their amended bid with the changed specification. And I'd
Yeah.
like to make sure we're looking at that so that we can see that evidence. Is that in
On,
here?
on page 2 of the staff report, under the notes, I wanted to clarify, because there is the grid with the bidders and what they proposed.
Yes.
That's the original proposals from the 9 bidders.
Mm-hmm.
And if, on page 1, you're actually recommending $158,000, which is the change on the quantity, and also is about an additional $3,000 more for the galvannealed material, which is a little bit easier to work with, lasts longer, but it's a little bit more expensive.
Did you have them fill out, just again, trying to tease out process issues here?
Okay.
Where we have in our attachment 2, which was the Carson Valley bid document, did they prepare an additional bid document showing what the cost increase was, or how did they respond back to you?
Let's see.
Because you're saying it was only about $3,000.
Attachment 4 includes a letter from PDM Steel Service, which is the supplier for the galvannealed material. But as to
Okay.
whether there's an actual a changed response page, no, there's not. That's why
Is that in the, okay, that's in the,
yeah. I included attachment 5, which is a draft copy of the actual
I
purchase
see,
order.
okay. No, I'm sorry, I just didn't follow it to track how this worked. Okay, thank you.
No, they're good questions.
Yeah.
As the buyer, I'm learning as I'm going along.
Excuse us if we're a little gun shy, but we just.
Oh, I understand.
It goes by
I
the
understand.
book. So, thank you, Gary.
That's why I was trying to
Okay,
spell out as much as I could in the staff report.
The bidder that won the award is Carson Valley Welding.
Yes.
And we'll let them go first with their
All right.
comments.
Thank you.
Morning, I'm Robert Huckabee. I'm an attorney for Carson Valley Welding. Don Heldorn, the owner of Carson Valley Welding.
Top of the morning.
Mr. Heldorn has had a business which has been manufacturing bear boxes that are widely used in the Tahoe area. So he has a lot of experience in building trash enclosures that are truly bear resistant. One of the things that the protester kind of addressed were some things related to some of the functionality of the unit. And what we've done is actually met each one of the technical specifications precisely. And by one of the key things we'd also point out is there was a criteria for vandal-proof. And our prototype uses a key similar to what they use on the bear boxes that for private uses, where the trash people have a key to insert. This makes it that a casual passerby cannot open it up and disrupt the contents, dump the trash or steal the containers or do those kinds of things. So that's a point that we've addressed. As relates to the trademark issue, is there included a copy of the trademark diagram in the package?
Yes.
If I might present to the council, here's a couple of pictures which the brown box is our prototype. The other two boxes are their product. Their trademark is specifically limited, and I quote from their trademark, "The mark consists of a configuration of the side portion of a metal container." We've outlined that in the copy of theirs to indicate that you folks can take a look at it from the real world person and say, is there an infringement? We believe it's clear there's not. And as counsel for Mr. Haldern's business, I'm prepared to defend that. As part of the contract award, we've agreed to indemnify the city from any trademark claims, and we're willing to take that risk and to make that agreement.
Other comments?
The question, one other thing they address is ADA. So,
On the height.
Okay, yes. The height of it, the ADA requirement is 48 inches. Our box is at 47.5 inches, which is within the ADA requirement. And obviously, this is a prototype. You can see on the picture of it, it has adjustable feet, which was part of the city's technical specifications so that it can be leveled and there can be height adjustments.
Any other questions?
Questions, go ahead, please.
I thought you were done.
Addressing another part of their objection by Bear Saver, they're talking about a design that uses a vertical chute with sloping on the top to interface with the tail would most likely be similar enough to our protected design to warrant legal action. We believe that's smoke and mirrors. Obviously, you've seen their trademark. You've seen pictures of the product, and I believe that it's visible to anyone that it's there. Their trademark is based on trade dress. Trade dress means that they've used it in 5 years. They've sold a lot of their containers in the national parks and other places. And so it's based on saying that if somebody walked by, that side profile would be identified with their product. We believe there's absolutely no infringement on that. Mr. Haldorn hadn't even seen their product when he designed his box.
Don Haldorn, Carson Valley Welding. When we designed our box, we designed it based on the criteria of the city of South Lake Tahoe. And to address the bear-proof, bear-resistant question, we've been building boxes for 9 years to the city and county, El Dorado County, and other counties surrounding the area. And we have 0% bear entries in our residential enclosures. And to make a box bear-proof under the guidelines of the city asked for a round hole to place recycles in. If you have a round hole in a box, anybody can stick their arm in there, and if there's arms long enough, they can reach the top of the box, and if the trash can is full, they will be able to pull out an empty Coke bottle. As far as the chute side, our design, which is different than the design of Bear Saver, because after I manufactured it, I went and took pictures of their box, and looked at their design. Their design is a chute that has no sides. Their sides are manufactured into their box. Our sidewalls of our chute are incorporated into the chute itself. So when you open it, you have metal sides on it to encapsulate the materials that you're placing. It's a little smaller in design, so it'll deter people from bringing 20-gallon trash sacks out of their home and placing them in the city's containers. You cannot put your arm in it. A bear would not be able to open the enclosure and insert his arm and be able to reach any refuse at all. And we have pictures of that. And I also would like to submit some pictures of some testing that we have done at the Yellowstone Wolf and Discovery Center under the direction of Patty Soka, who is Living with Wildlife Foundation Director. And may I present these to you, please? Those pictures of that I've passed out are of our residential unit. We don't have any testing for this prototype unit. We just haven't had time, but the 34 years of fabrication experience that I have is more than enough to know that that unit is going to be bear resistant on the doors. Once again, the hole in the top is something the city specified they would like to have. So we built it under their guidelines, and we did our best to build it as high as we could to allow ease of use, to meet ADA guidelines, and to keep people from reaching in and taking out the products.
Okay, any questions for Carson Valley Welding?
I have a question for the attorney. I know a little bit about copywriting music and other kinds of art, but how do you assure a design is proprietary? Is it a patent? Is it a trademark? Is it a copyright? So how do you protect the design of a product like this?
Well, the product could have been protected by a copyright. It could have been attempted to protect by a patent if there was a unique enough design. As a matter of fact, I believe that Bear Saver has patented their latch, which they use on other boxes, but that latch is actually not in compliance with the city's specifications for this box.
Has Don done any protection of the one he's marketing? So anybody could copy Don's design for the other bear box.
It's in the public domain.
And you're not proposing that you do any kind of protection of your work here, as far as
not at this time.
No,
okay.
It's an issue that what Don is presenting here is a product that is responsive to the city's technical specifications. He's presenting his experience in building products like this, having done that in this area. By the way, Don lives here in town, and so he's seen that in its actual use. The product technical protections, at this point in time, it would not be eligible for a trademark protection because it's a brand new product. Bear Saver was able to obtain their trademark based on an alleged 5 years of public use. So it got a respect as trade dress in that they convinced the patent office that their profile from the side, as they've diagrammed, would be identified with their company. And we don't dispute their trademark because we came up with our own design.
Thank you.
Any other questions of council?
I have
Angela?
a question. I want to make sure we're not barking up the wrong tree on this one. Does the city have, as I read this is primarily just not to get away, but to try to make sure we're on the germane arguments here. This is for a recycling program. It's funded through a recycle grant for Recycle Tahoe, and it's supposed to be, as part of it, animal resistant. do we have any standards for bear resistance elsewhere in the city that we apply in any other way, or any requirements that are, I'm just trying to clarify, as we're looking at Bear Savers protest issues, is the focus on whether it's trademark or not, but being around bears and being bear-proof really the germane argument? And do we have any other standards in the city or any receptacles that are held up to being bear-proof in the city?
Gary?
Not that I'm aware of, although I do know that the Assistant Parks and Recreation Director, before formulating the technical specifications, met with some of the local agencies concerning wildlife and actually drew up a list of potential bidders that had boxes that are out for the public to purchase, that have been used in the past and that have been successful being wildlife resistant.
Ms. Roverwood or Mr. Marino, give us any further clarification on that?
Stan?
The element of recycling here makes a difference in the design as far as bear resistance or proof. Obviously, we had to make allowances for the recycling effort because, as you mentioned, it is funded through a recycling grant. So it's kind of, there's the primary purpose of these receptacles is to encourage people to recycle and then to make them as resistant as possible to animal invasion.
Okay, any other questions?
And Hillary Rover, Director of Development Services. I would need to go back and check the city code to see if there are any specifics related to bear-proofness when it comes to our requirements for dumpster enclosures, but as I recall, there is not. We just use the term but don't define it.
Okay.
And this just goes to trying to clarify, is what's been awarded within the realm of what's reasonable in terms of any other city standards or requirements and the program need for it, and in understanding what the challenge is and what are the relevant issues in the challenge.
Okay, any other questions for Carson Valley Welding from council? All right, thank you. The one protester is the Bear Savers. Please come forward. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, Council. My name is Randy Stanaway, and I'm with Bear Saver Tahoe Bear Box. We've prepared some material data handouts for you guys, if I can hand those out to you guys.
Everybody has a copy.
The only comment I have when we get a presentation like this and something handed to us at the last minute, it's hard for us to. There's a lot of stuff in here to read this.
I think this is just the
okay.
The first.
You'll
package.
summarize it.
Yeah. Anyway, the summarization is.
We do have duplicates. So if any members of the audience want to see a copy of this, because we have.
Is that the same one here?
It's the same one we have.
Given to you this morning without the binder, but you've got the full packet.
So when this bid first came out, basically our background is we're the North America's premier manufacturer of bear-proof and public high-abuse trash units. Combined engineering experience, we have about 55 years between myself and the other manufacturing engineer at our factory. So we spend a lot of money, time, effort, engineering with material analysis, and also putting patents on all our products. All of our products in the field are tested with bears and, with public too. So, and our CE 232 that we proposed meets all the, meets and exceeds most of the city guidelines. And it's an off-the-shelf product too. I mean, we have these things in service in Tahoe. We have probably about 600 in service all around Tahoe. Our customers are like Caltrans, every ski resort, all the cities in the North Lake, Incline Village, Ivgid. The list just goes on. And then so we think that their material, that when they bid the G30 galvanization, which technically you can see in their package gives your box about a 5-year lifetime, number one. And then when you powder coat on top of that, you can't get a good chemical resistant powder coating to stick to that product. That's why you have to use galvanneal. And galvanneal is about a G90 weight, with a good powder coating should give your box about a 22 to 28 year lifetime in conditions like Tahoe. Our FEA analysis put our boxes at about 18 to 22 years in the marine environment, like beaches and piers, where a lot of them are as well. Even though Carson Valley Welding's box looks good and it appears to meet most of the specifications, it's about 100 pounds underweight per unit. And it doesn't have stainless steel hinges. It's got some issues where pretty much I believe from my experience that you're going to be replacing these boxes within 5 years or taking them out and having them fixed. And, our boxes are just pretty much the standard all over the United States. Everywhere has these boxes. And that's pretty much it. They're a little bit more money, but we make them as cheaply as we possibly can to have them hold up against the public. We have units in Yosemite Valley that get used probably 500,000 times a year. We have hundreds of these same units in Yosemite Valley, and that's kind of our test grounds. Not for the bears, like we already know it's bear proof. It's for the public. High abuse destroys units. And he has a great residential product, but those only get used a couple times a week. Your street side cans are going to be getting used hundreds of times, possibly per day, depending on the location. It's going to have to hold up to all the chemicals on the Highway 50 and all kinds of harsh stuff. And we just don't believe that for $158,000, for an extra $60,000, you're going to get something that's going to last you 25, 30 years. In the bid, it was kind of unclear whether the city wanted the cheapest box on their streets or the best value to the city. So, we just pulled our regular CE232 CHRR, with the chute that we've always had and just submitted that because that's what they actually put up there in the beginning on the first bid. They had a picture of our unit on the first bid. And then our attorneys told us to call you and see what the dealio was with it because it was a trademark configuration problem. If Carson Valley continues with his product, even though he has a couple changes in the profile of his design, our attorneys believe that it's going to cause confusion in the marketplace, and it will be a viable case against Bear Saver and Carson Valley Welding, and they're prepared to take action immediately. So, I'm just here to kind of, show the council that if you guys are going to spend this kind of money from this grant, do you want something that's going to last a long time, that's proven, or do you not really care and you guys can bring them in and, and fix them up every now and then and have them repowder coated? Because that's what's going to happen if you don't get a Bear Saver box.
Okay, questions? Hal?
Two issues here that kind of concern me. One is, and I'll ask staff, so when we originally solicited for bids, we used their product as a picture of what we wanted? We used a picture of their trademark product?
At the time, I wasn't aware where it came from. It was submitted by the original project manager, but when I was informed by Bear Saver that it was their product that we were advertising in the schematic drawings, I immediately rejected or canceled that bid, and we redid it so that we did not use their schematic drawings.
But did anything else change other than not the picture?
The picture was taken off of the bid.
But did any other specs change?
We did add the section about indemnification, that it was to be an original design.
Okay, so but nothing else changed in the bid except you removed the picture?
Correct. Those two items were changed.
And it's your contention that given these specs, you should be granted sole source standing?
Usually, most of our deals are sole source because we are the government standard for products. They spec us in on everything for every Forest Service job, whether it's a food storage container, recyclable trash container. They spec us in. Sometimes it has to go to bid.
So that's part of your protest, is you think you should have been a sole source given the specs?
If they want to use those specs, yeah.
Patrick, you had a comment?
Yeah, unless they're trying to do a contest for, the boxes, but, I mean, ours boxes have been in service now for over 12 years. We've had zero warranty issues on that product. We have them as far east as Nova Scotia, as far north as Alaska, and as far south as San Antonio,
I'm not
Texas.
questioning the validity of the product. I'm just trying to find the process we did.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. So.
Patrick, you had a comment?
Well, I just want to comment, besides the specifications were not changed, but we took out the diagram and the pictures in there. So the specifications are there, and it's up to the bidders as to how they meet those specifications.
We took
Previously, we had a design, my understanding is, a picture of what we were looking
I guess
for.
all I'm trying to get at is when the initial solicitation was done, all the vendors were given a picture of this product and specifications. Okay, so we rescinded that picture after we found that it was somebody else's design.
That's correct.
Angela, you had some comments?
One, just to follow up on House, when you rescinded the bid, did you let people know that it was that there was a concern about trademark infringement or something to keep the playing field even around the second
Yes,
application?
I included as an attachment the letter from Bear Saver stating that it was
Okay.
a trademark infringement.
So they were
in their
clear
eyes.
their designs needed not to be. And then,
Right.
and then I just want to clarify a couple of things, Randy. As you talk about your product, one, it sounds like even though you're spec'd in, you have done public bid.
Yes, yes.
You're aware that, and you were aware of our rules that it was a low bid, best value environment?
Well, we didn't know. It did not say low bid. It said best value to the city. So best value to the city is us, meaning, you guys are going to pay a certain amount for a box. We're going to give you a box that's going to last a long, long time. It didn't say lowest bidder wins it.
Did you know how much money was available in this program?
$394,000 was the grant. Now, if it would have said low dollar bidder, we would have just re-engineered a light box, a light gauge box made out of G30 or G60 like Carson Valley Welding, and we would have beat him in price. But our box has to have a certain standard. We have to have stainless steel hinges and all
I understand
that
that's what
stuff.
you're saying. But
Yeah.
if you've done low bid work, public work, by definition, is low bid.
Yeah, it didn't say low bid. In the bid documents, it said best value to the city. It did not say low bidder. It did not say low bidder wins the bid.
But your bid came in at almost double the low bid. And you chose to go at a high standard.
We go to the standard that we always go to for public high abuse boxes. There's only one standard. There's only one way to make these boxes that they last. And
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Again, our task here is the process. And did our staff violate this process and how they did this so that this is not an appropriate award to be making?
I believe they did, because they didn't say low bidder. They just said best value to the city. And,
Maybe we could have the city attorney respond to that comment?
Sure. Patrick? Value to me could be also low bid, too.
And I have not reviewed the bid documents, so is that what we said? Best value or low bid?
Yes.
And our administrative code provides either lowest responsible bidder / best value. So we're looking for both when we're looking at the awarding of the
But it
contract.
didn't say that. That's what he's saying.
It apparently didn't say that in the actual bid documents.
Best value. You have a copy of the bid documents here? Yes.
Any other questions?
And also I wanted to add, Carson Valley Welding submitted a bear testing result from his residential units, and it wasn't even pertaining to the product that he has right now, which is kind of misleading to the council.
Okay, any other questions for Randy? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And then we had one more protest, did we, besides Gary, did we have one more protest?
No, I believe Bear Saver is the manufacturer. Randy can clarify this. Bear Saver is the manufacturer, what Tahoe Bear Box is the actual distributor.
Okay.
So they're
So the same.
two companies, but kind of the same entity.
Okay, so
How did they submit bids separately?
We do that all the time with them. We double bid a lot on public works jobs, because a lot of the Forest Service jobs require two bids, but they want the same product. So depending on, Bear Saver does the Forest Service
I'm
stuff.
confused. You're the same company and you submit two
No,
bids?
I'm Tahoe Bear Box.
Yeah?
And Bear Saver is a different company. They're the actual factory that actually manufactures them. I'm just an engineer and a distributor.
Okay.
So it's, yeah, one product, two different distributors to technically meet the
Got
rules.
it. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the council?
I just want to be clear. I don't think there's really an issue as to whether or not Bear Saver or Tahoe Bear Box would have met the qualifications as well, the specifications. The real issue is whether Carson Valley Welding meets those specifications as we bid the project.
And I want to open up to the public, too. Does anyone in the public have any comments on this bid? Okay, I'll close the public comment. Back to council.
Can I ask a question of,
Sure, Hal.
Don? If we're looking at best value, obviously longevity is one of the things. What is your box warranted for? What is the length of warranty you give?
Well, we had a limited lifetime warranty on the stainless steel hinges. Randy made a statement that we're not using stainless steel hinges, and in fact we are, and it is stated in my bid package as such.
So what is your warranty?
The warranty is lifetime on the hinges, and we've got 10 years on the powder coat, and we're also going to be using an anti-graffiti powder because we feel it's best for the city because of the tagging and the tagging, marking, and any vinyl decals that are put on the box. They'll be able to be removed. So
in
that's
response to the appellant's arguments that their boxes are designed to use 1,000 times a day and yours are used residentially.
We have the same usage.
And they give a 20-year warranty. You're giving a...
He didn't state a warranty.
I thought he did. I thought he said 20
He
years.
said they should last. He didn't state a warranty.
But you're giving the city a limited lifetime warranty on the
On the
box itself.
hinges and the latches. And those are the parts that would wear out.
How long should your box last?
As long as his lasts. It's the same steel. It's the same material.
Okay. Angela?
Gary, what were your criteria for evaluating the responses received? Like, what was the basis for your rankings?
The ranking is based upon the pricing.
All right, so even though we say best value really meant pricing. There weren't any other factoring criteria brought in, like lifetime, length of life, any other
No.
subjective or other data. It was purely on price.
It was making sure that the lowest response was also a responsive bidder. Yeah. I want to just add, I want to thank the council because of the time frame involved. Usually these things would be worked out before going before council. This item was already on the agenda, and when the bid protest came in on Friday, and then, so therefore we're here before you today.
Okay, thank you, Gary.
If as a consequence of council action, there is, so either way we go, and with the timelines on this program, what happens? What happens, I'm thinking back to like your comments, a different situation, but one in which, as a result of a decision made by council, there was a protest and a delay in the project moving. So what happens either way, whether we send it back to be rebid or we accept it, what are the consequences and the consequences to the grant?
It's possible that the grant could go away, although the grant coordinator has applied for an additional one-year extension. We've already had a one-year extension. Stan might be able to
follow up on Angela's question.
Okay.
What would be the quickest turnaround if we said there is some confusion here, we'd like to rebid it and clarify that it's as long as they meet the criteria, it's low bidder, or things like that. What would the turnaround time if you said, okay, we're going to reject all bids, reissue a solicitation? How soon what's the shortest time frame you could use?
We usually go out to bid, have it out posted for about 3 weeks. After that,
what's the shortest we could do and still meet criteria?
that depends upon the vendors themselves. We could do it just a matter of a couple of days if they can put together a bid that quickly.
Legally, what's the legal requirement? Yeah.
Well, I think legally it just has to be a reasonable time. The shortest I've seen it is generally about 2 weeks.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
And then if it was 2 weeks, at what point would we be back at this point?
Well, it's about 2 weeks before we can get it back on the council, so you're looking at least a month.
At least a month
before it would come back.
Would that jeopardize the program?
Yeah, that's possible.
What was the deadline of the program?
The end of May. The end of May.
Okay.
By the end of the May,
on the wording.
By the end of May, we have to have it awarded, or we got to actually have the cans.
I'm not familiar with the actual wording in the grant itself.
The grant's been going on for a couple of years, according to staff report.
It has. We've already had one extension on this
Yeah.
grant because of the transition in staff.
Can we get clarification about the impact on, is it easy enough to look up the wording on if the cans have to be bought or where we have to be in the process in May to retain the grant?
If we tried to make it on the existing deadline without any extension, I would assume the money would have to be encumbered by the end of when the grant expired.
And that could be a purchase order, correct? And a purchase order is not that hard to get taken care of. Let me ask the other question and answer the other side of it. If there's a protest, a suit is filed, or something is going on, or however the protest continues, what happens to our ability to move forward? That's what I'm saying, but I want to hear staff really.
Yeah, I would.
That's accurate.
I would assume that we can't go forward with the purchase, obviously, until that's resolved, and the grant would either have to be extended or dropped.
Okay.
I'd recommend we move forward with all speed and
You want to make
rebid.
any more comments from council before we take action?
I have a couple of comments. It does say that the award shall be made to the bidder who, in its sole discretion of the city, offers the best value to the city. I'm a little uncomfortable about some of the imperfections. We got burned pretty badly with Lakeview Commons. And, I know there's bid deadlines or grant deadlines, but I'm concerned that I think we should do this again. I think we should be a little more clear on some of these issues or address these concerns. The idea of changing the type of metal being used after the fact bothers me, even though it might not be material. But all these issues can be brought in front of a court, and who knows how a judge would look. And I think we need to bring more perfection to the bidding process than we have here.
And I think we should state it specifically, lowest bid, based on the specs.
That's right.
I appreciate, though, the wiggle room with best value, and that if you get a low bidder that is not that we don't find to be a responsible bidder, I like that, but I would add in maybe the judging criteria, that the criteria will be based on low bid, number one criteria, and then the secondary. I think that can help us out with that to protect us.
And no criticism to staff, but you didn't seem, when you put the criteria together, that you appreciated what kind of metal should be used. And so, what kind of expertise does our staff have to evaluate the qualities of these boxes?
That's why it was close.
And again, it's a learning process. But I just think that there's too many questions here for me to award a bid today. I'm just uncomfortable. I think we should do it again.
Okay.
To the city manager, can you ensure, working with staff, to get this back to us in a timely way so that we can protect ourselves to make sure that there's a purchase order and this is encumbered within that deadline? I don't want to trust an extension in this environment.
We could have this back to you by the meeting of April 17th. In the interim, we can work with the folks on the grant to explain the situation. But I think you can still encumber these funds in time to meet the requirements of the grant.
And you know the issues as discussed here today. So, okay, Chair will entertain a motion then.
I make a motion, what would we say, a motion not to award this bid and to
Your call.
request a rebid?
Well, I think all
Or
we're going
would
to do
be-
is make a motion to reject all
Reject all
bids.
bids.
Make a motion to reject all bids,
And then rebid it.
and then direct staff to rebid.
Is that a motion then?
That's a motion.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion by council? Let's vote.
That motion was unanimously carried.
Okay, moving on. That's the end of the consent agenda. We move forward to new business. First item on new business is agreement between the City of South Lake Tahoe, California Tahoe Conservancy to transfer property ownership between the city and CTC. And the APN numbers are all listed on here, and staff will present those properties. Hillary?
Good morning, Council. Hillary Roverud, Director of Development Services. What you're considering in this agenda item is an agreement with the California Tahoe Conservancy to transfer property ownership between the city and the Conservancy. The agreement involves 2 city parcels and 4 Conservancy sites and some coverage allocation. Thank you, Sebastian. You're awesome on short notice to get the map up for me. The parcels involved are the city parcels. The first is the city's former drive-in theater property that's on Glenwood. And the purpose of the Conservancy obtaining ownership of this property is to complete the restoration and remove the coverage that exists on the property. Then they plan to retire the majority of that coverage to meet their obligations under the Excess Coverage Mitigation Program, and potentially put the property up for sale as a single-family home site. The second city property involved is along the Upper Truckee River near Sunset Drive, and the Conservancy's interest in this property is that by their owning it, they can include it as part of their Upper Truckee Marsh restoration project. Conservancy parcels that are included in this agreement, the first one is the former Unical property on Highway 50 that's next to the IHOP. This property was purchased by the CTC just last year, and due to the location, the zoning, and that there had been previous coverage on the property, it could be available for a variety of uses. There's no specific plan with the city to use it for anything particular at this point, but because it does have that development potential, it could be an asset for the city. Next is the Conservancy parcels next to the Tahoe Daily Tribune building on the corner of Harrison Avenue and Modesto. This is 5 different properties, and I do need to correct some information in the staff report. I fixed it at the end of the paragraph, but not within the paragraph. The maximum allowed coverage, if we were to develop that as a parking lot, would be 50%, and there's a couple places in here where it still says 70. But as a public service facility, we could develop that with 50% coverage, and your next agenda item includes a amendment to professional services agreement with R.O. Anderson to begin taking that from a conceptual site for a parking lot to detailed designs as part of the Harrison Avenue project. Then we have a few properties owned by the Conservancy that have historically been maintained and operated by the city. These include 3 parcels on the west end of Reagan Beach, where the city has maintained the property as part of Reagan Beach, and it is one of the sites that is utilized for weddings.
Right next to, as you exit Reagan Beach to the right?
Yes.
On the hill where
Yes,
they do weddings there?
on the west side.
And we
there.
manage that now anyway, don't we, for the weddings?
Yes, there has been an agreement. I believe it's actually expired at this point, but the city has historically maintained and operated
Great
that.
location, yeah.
And the second property in a similar situation is property that was acquired by the Conservancy that was previously owned by Caltrans for the potential highway rerouting right away. And it's right there as part of the soccer field next to the Lake Tahoe Community College, the community ball field. The Conservancy property includes the parking lot there, a small portion of the field itself, and the bike trail. And again, the city has historically maintained and operated that property. And the question came up at the CTC board meeting last week about why the city would want to take ownership of these properties if we've had these agreements to maintain and operate. And really, it's just a streamlining of the process and putting properties in the hands of agencies that best manage them. So if there are major maintenance or repairs that need to be done on these properties, it really streamlines the process that the one doing the work actually owns the property as well. As part of the agreement, also, the Conservancy would allocate 60,000 square feet of potential land coverage within the South State Line hydrologic area and 50,000 square feet of potential land coverage within the Upper Truckee hydrologic area to be used for city public service or recreation projects within those hydrologic zones. There's no monetary exchange associated with this particular agreement. However, we would split the title and escrow fees, and then the city would obtain title insurance for the conservancy properties that we'd take ownership of. The CTC board did approve this agreement at their meeting last week. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for Hillary? Angela? I'll start on her. Bruce?
One comment. One thing we did do as part of the agreement, we've reviewed the agreement and we approved it. We did add the 2 last paragraphs under the indemnification on page 8 dealing with the CERCLA issues, and that was primarily because of the Unocal gas station that they're going to transfer over to us. So we wanted to be clear if there is any CERCLA issues, any petroleum, any cleanup that needs to be done on that site, that CTC would
if I
be
remember
doing it.
correctly, how we purchased that property as a redevelopment agency, then sold it to Fantasy Inn. So I think the title was clear at that time. You may want to check it, but that was an issue back then.
And the
at that
case
time.
with the regional board has been closed.
Bruce?
That was the same question I had about whether the site's clean.
I'm sure it is. We'll open it up to the public for any comments from the public regarding transfer land between the CTC and the city of South Lake Tahoe.
Hi, my name is Bob Niedermeyer. I live on O'Malley Drive. I just had a couple of questions for Hillary.
Welcome, Bob. I said welcome.
Oh, thank you. And good morning, Council. Sorry. The appraisal values of the different properties, are they comparable? The ones that they're going to be exchanging? And what specifically?
Pretty close. It's pretty close. We looked at it. It's a few bucks in favor of CTC, but it's not significant.
Right. And then the streamlining, what are we talking about in savings in dollars as a result of the streamlining? The JPA fields are getting pretty old, aren't they? I mean,
the what?
JPA, the public ball fields, I've heard are getting old and are going to be needing replacement. Does actually having title to the property save you money when it comes time to replacing them? That's all.
I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
I think, Hillary, why don't you address that? But I do think, Cal, you could correct us in maintaining the new community ball field built at the college. Isn't that a responsibility of Measure R to maintain? Or that they fund the cost of the maintenance on that?
Well, they fund the cost of building it. I think we're maintaining it.
So we're maintaining it anyway, okay.
Hillary?
Yeah, just to answer the questions that were brought up, the table in Attachment C has details regarding each property, and it did just occur to me as I was sitting down, I also did not mention that for the drive-in theater property, excuse me, the city would retain the rights for an easement and a construction staging area related to the Bijou Erosion Control Project. But back to Attachment C that gives the details of each of the properties, excuse me. The drive-in theater property, we did have an appraisal done. That appraisal, the value was set at $630,000. There is some question of the amount of coverage on the property that was included in the appraisal, so we agreed to make the value a range until those issues could be clarified with TRPA. And then $18,000 was taken off of the value for the easement and the construction staging area for the Bijou Erosion Control Project. The other properties that had appraisals done on them were the Harrison Avenue properties. Find the value here. And that was the 5 different lots. And the appraisal for those came in at $150,000. And then the former Unocal property was also, we had a formal appraisal done that came in at $357,000. And then the other properties that are listed as the asset lands, we did not go through the expense of having a detailed appraisal done on them, but we were able to put some approximate values based on comparable sales as well as experience with the CTC on land exchanges. So that's where those values came from. And if you compare the just the asset lands part of the trade, it does come out to pretty close to an even trade for the two agencies.
Questions for Hillary? All right.
Maybe a follow-up comment for Bob to help explain things, and I know we have Bruce coming up from CTC to help explain a few of the things. But in terms of the value, especially at that ball field, we learned when we did the Snow Globe event that all of a sudden there was a wrinkle in the city trying to do a larger scale event than just the local soccer leagues managing it, because we had to go through CTC as another layer of approvals for a property that we essentially manage and take care of and consider to be ours, so that it's a clarification and a streamlining. And then the one comment I promised earlier I'd make, and then as a prelude to Bruce, is that CTC has been talking with the city and other agencies that over the last 20 years, as urban properties have been acquired by CTC to do their function. There are some properties that make more sense to be aligned into another holder, such as CTC does a better job with urban uplands areas. Perhaps some of their properties that are more in wilder areas may make more sense for the Forest Service or the county to maintain because of adjacency to their properties and to preserve and protect them. And we all have to be paying attention to budgets and the affordability of maintaining them. This exchange aligns so that the city is owning properties that make some sense and have it. We're not going to do anything with that drive-in property. It was primarily a backup for coverage based on hydrological area, and also because we thought at one point we were going to move Bijou Park in that direction.
A new
or
forest
Bijou Golf
is growing
Clubs,
there now.
and a new forest is growing in there now. So to align that back to CTC makes sense with CTC's covenants and something they're not moving away from. That was the biggest piece I wanted to frame. After the CTC meeting, I got hit with several people saying, is CTC getting out of the business? Are they going into development? And that's not the case. We're just aligning properties strategically that make sense, such as that Unical property along Highway 50 by Fantasy Inn. It makes more sense for us to have that available for appropriate development on the city's business core, and for them to have, again, the drive-in property in some of the other areas. So it's really a smart, cautious, slow-moving alignment of strategic properties that fit very tight criteria and don't violate bond covenants, use covenants, or any other factor for the CTC or for the city.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, Bruce Eisner with the Tahoe Conservancy staff. As Hillary had indicated, and Angela is a member of our board, the Conservancy did unanimously approve the proposal that is before the council last Thursday. And essentially, on behalf of the staff of the Conservancy, we appreciated the efforts of the city manager and Hillary, as well as a couple of the council members who were involved in helping to put together the proposal before you that I think Angela has summarized very well. It meets our objectives respectively. It's consistent with the principles of both organizations, and I'm certainly available to answer specific questions if you have any.
Any specific questions for the CTC? We like you. You give away money. So it's always a good agency that gives away money. Any other questions from council? Okay. We've already closed the public session. Back to council for action. Chair will entertain a motion.
I'd just like to clarify, too, that we had the benefit of Hal Cole coming in to help us with the final negotiations on this, who is a former CTC board member and long-term advocate who has brought a very deep understanding and historic perspective on it. And Hal, if you'd want to carry the motion. All right, I'll carry the motion then to approve and execute the agreement for the property transfer between CTC and the City of South Lake Tahoe.
Moved and seconded. Let's vote.
That motion's unanimously carried.
Thank you. Next, under new business, is amendment number 1 to professional service agreement between the City of South Lake Tahoe and R.O. Anderson Engineering for engineering design, permitting and financial consulting services for Harrison Avenue project in the amount of $53,771. Hillary?
Thank you. Hillary Roverwood, Director of Development Services. What's before you is amendment number 1 to the professional services agreement with R.O. Anderson for engineering, design, permitting, and financial consulting services for the Harrison Avenue project. In December, the City Council approved the professional services agreement with R.O. Anderson, and we have been working with the property owners in the Harrison Avenue area, and R.O. Anderson has been facilitating a lot of very good discussions with those property owners. And as the project design has moved forward and been refined, we've directed several changes. Those changes include realignment of the bike trail behind the businesses along Riverside Avenue, including the parking lot on the 5 parcels on the corner of Modesto and Harrison that were just discussed in the land exchange. Modifications to the 2 boat trailer parking lots down by the Lakeview Commons end of the project. And those modifications are to accommodate the bike trail going through those properties and connecting to Lakeview Commons. The current project design, which we're at about 50% level, are scheduled to be presented to the Planning Commission as well as the City Council in April. The Planning Commission meeting is April 12th and Council is April 17th, where we would, just for discussion purposes, present those designs and get some detailed feedback on that. These changes that have been directed require an amendment to the professional services agreement with R.O. Anderson in order to complete the design work that is outside of the original project area and to incorporate the property there on Harrison and Modesto. The amendment also includes a review of the city's pedestrian light standard. Council has expressed some concerns or questions about the current city light standard, so we've requested that the lighting engineer that is working on the Harrison Avenue project also do an overall review of that standard for its appropriateness for lighting bike paths and sidewalks. The total cost of the amendment is $53,771, which is within the original contracted contingency amount. With this amendment, it would bring the entire contract amount to $599,895. I'm sorry, $599,895. No cents. So other than that blunder, if you have any other questions,
Questions
I'm
for
happy to
staff
answer
before
them.
I open to the public out?
Hillary, can you bring me up to speed? We have an existing parking lot next to the new Lakeview Commons boat launch. That was a motel we tore down.
Mhm.
That parking lot, I think, is only covering 30% of the land.
Correct.
When Rick Angelocci was here, he and I looked at it. There was banked coverage on there from the existing motel that exceeded 30%.
Correct.
Is that coverage still there? Because I'm still concerned that that parking lot is not big enough, and I've always advocated that we need to, especially with boat launching, it just eats up parking like you can't believe.
Right.
Is there still coverage available on that? And if so, would that be under the scope of R. Anderson to see if we could expand the parking lot given that we have coverage there?
Yes, it is. I've been working with the TRPA staff to allow for 50% coverage on that property as a public service facility that's accessory to the recreation facilities adjacent. The difficulty was that that property was not included in the community plan boundaries when it was demoed as the hotel and turned into the parking lot. But I do have verbal acknowledgement from TRPA staff that their interpretation of the code would be that could have up to 50%, and I'm currently working on getting that in writing from them. But it is a part of this scope amendment that R.O. Anderson would redesign that parking area. Putting the bike path through there, we may need to make some adjustments to the trailer parking, which we need to retain for the obligations under the grant, but that may need to be moved in order to accommodate that bike trail. And in addition, providing more regular car vehicle parking up to that 50% coverage on that property. And that property would also be utilized as a primary location for water quality treatment for the entire project area.
And am I correct? There was, with the footprint of the motel, there was more than 50%
Yes,
coverage there.
there is.
So that extra coverage is in the South State Line area. Could we then use that coverage to go to the 30 to 50% on Harrison Avenue parking?
Yes. So we have a bank of coverage in that state line hydrologic area that would allow us to utilize that for the Harrison and Modesto property as well as expanding
my
that
goal
parking
is to
lot.
maximize the parking on both those.
Yes.
If I've learned anything in 20 years, it's parking really drives the projects. I don't care how much we try to inhibit it and encourage people to take buses and stuff. Our visitors for the foreseeable future want to get back and forth to the beach.
Yes, and that is our intent, to maximize it in both those locations. We've also, again, been working with the property owners diligently to squeeze in every parking space that we can find room for, so that they can still have parking for their
Plus,
businesses.
it lessens the impact on the neighborhood if we can provide public parking.
Right.
Thank you.
Bruce? Angela? Okay. Open it to the public for comments. Anyone in the public have any comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, back to council. Council entertain a motion.
I move approval. Second.
Moved and seconded. Let's vote.
The motion's unanimously carried.
Thank you. The next item on new business, item C, discussion and possible direction action for staff to facilitate the development of a joint study group with the City of South Lake Tahoe Fire Department and the Lake Valley Fire Protection District to explore a possible consolidation of the two agencies. Brian?
Mayor Pro Tem, Council, Brian Euler, Police and Fire Chief for City of South Lake Tahoe. On the agenda transmittal, I indicated that it would take about 10 minutes. I hope you're not disappointed or feel cheated if I go a little bit under that, not counting for questions. Our city's chop from the top approach to financial problem has positioned us well in terms of our fire department potentially merging or consolidating with Lake Valley. Our lean design, meaning no chief and not having a traditional management structure, has given rise to a groundswell of dialogue both inside and outside the department. My sense at this very early stage is that at a minimum our community is poised for a thoughtful evaluation and consideration for such a merger or consolidation. Early on, our fire department, our fire association, was in contact with Lake Valley Fire Association, and in turn, Gareth Harris, the chief for Lake Valley Fire Department, has approached the Lake Valley governing body in an effort to seek approval, which was completed on March 8th, for continuing to move a process forward. Note that I previously referred to this as a merger. I think that, in my mind, the end result of a full consolidation would be representing an entirely new organization. Characterizing this as one taking over another might be dangerous or cause one group to feel inferior in some way to the other group. So I think it's important for us to be sensitive about some of those things as we move forward. I believe that our ultimate goal or end view should be a larger, more efficient organization that makes better use of upper-level resources. An example of that would be having a single command structure that oversees 5 stations that operate within the city, as opposed to 2 separate command structures, each of which do 3 or 2 stations. Just seems on its face as being more efficient. Further, a single training program would be useful and more efficient. Having a single fire prevention program, I believe, would meet the needs of our community. Today, staff is asking for council support to move forward with this request. This request is simple. We're not asking for money or a consultant firm or anything like that. It seems to me that to make the best decision about such an effort that has some significance to it would require our people, meaning our council members, Lake Valley Board, our city manager, employees, and management folks to fully understand the intimate financial and people details about such a merger. A closing thought is that I don't believe that such an effort would be wasted because there's really a broad spectrum of potential outcomes. On one end, we could leave our organizations as they are right now. In the middle somewhere might be contracts with Lake Valley that includes coverage, management coverage or command kinds of coverage at more significant events, coverage for fire marshal services and fire prevention programs, maybe even some sort of a JPA formed between the two organizations. And then at the other end of the spectrum, of course, is a successful creation of a completely new organization that represents the needs of all the city and Lake Valley District residents. So that concludes my presentation, pending any of your questions.
Questions for the chief? Okay, seeing none, I'll open it to the public for comments. Anyone in the public have any comments?
Dave Huber, Lake Valley Fire Protection
Welcome,
District, Board Director, and we urge you to go forward with this, at least on a committee standpoint, to sit down and let's talk about consolidation or mergers or whatever you're referring to it, annexation. Our board voted to bring this proposal to you, and I think it's best for our service to our community that at least we owe them to look into it and to forge on. So,
questions of Dave? Okay, thank you.
All right.
Anyone else have any comments under public comments?
I do have one question for Dave. Dave, who would be representing Lake Valley's board on this study group?
That hasn't been decided yet until you guys make a decision here if you're going to pursue it.
Okay.
So then we'd get back to our meeting and decide who'd be on that committee. And I'm sure you'd be doing the same thing if you approve it today.
Okay, anyone else in the public have any comments before I close public comments? Seeing none, public comments are closed. Back to council for discussion and action. Regarding the timing, I think timing is perfect for us right now because of the economy, and obviously our structure has changed. And one important thing in the study group that I was really glad to see is that we're going to have, it's recommended we have Fire Association representative. I think that's critical that we have our association there at the table because it's going to affect them too. So with that, I'll open it up to comments from the council. Angela?
Serving on the JPA one, I'm already seeing how well our two agencies work together in providing all of our EMS services, and that this is a great opportunity to look forward. I do want to make sure that the community understands, at least from my perspective as a council member, we're in an era where we have to look at cost and service delivery efficiencies, but that this really will only exist if it makes sense for our staff and the community they serve. If this doesn't work, you don't move forward on a cost basis. It's not the answer, and it won't be rammed down people's throats. There are a lot of things to be looked at, and as this evolves, I am clear that there will be ample opportunity for our community members to really weigh in on this and to understand what this means to them as those who will be receiving those services. And I just want to make sure that that's really clear, that this biweekly process with this list, that we're looking first, does the service model fit? Is it appropriate? If it's not, doesn't mean meet the test to go forward. What benefits can it provide? And then what will it cost? And then we start really talking with our community about, is it what they want then, having done all that work? And I want to make sure that's really clear.
Yeah, and to the public, this is just a study group. No decisions, as Angela said, have been made. A lot of questions we have to get defined, and so we're looking at the opportunity to do this, but no way are we proposing anything at this point. But we got a lot of questions, and we got to get a lot of answers. Bruce?
I just think it's a good idea to look at its potential for saving the city some money, and we need to save money.
Hal?
We've been talking about this as long as I've been involved in the city. As you say, timing's right. We owe it to the public to look at what it would mean, but I agree with Angela. The primary concern we all have going into this is public safety, response times, level of service. Are we being asked to also appoint two council members at this meeting, or if we pass this, to do it at a later
Two council members at this meeting. By the way, Angela referred to it. Angela and I sit on a JPA. Tahoe provides the ambulance service. We've got a template, and we've worked together for 10 years on that template, and it's worked quite well. And by the way, most of the calls are for ambulance service right now. So the JPA has been working well together for a long, long time, and we've got a great working relationship with Lake Valley Fire Protection
Would
District.
it be appropriate for the two members of the ambulance JPA to also serve as this? What is people's...
It's up to council.
Yeah, if we have your confidence, it makes sense to move forward. Or, I mean, Tom and I are both, neither one of us have any secrets or what we do, so that if it was the council's desire to add
What's that mean,
a
Angela?
level
We
of
have no
knowledge.
secrets what we do.
Well, it's just wide open, and we're not hugging our experience and our
Right.
work to our chest, and that we're the only ones who can do it. If the council felt it was important to add another level of expertise by having one or two members do it, I don't have an objection to
Yeah.
it. But we are steeped in this.
I think you're more familiar. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Just as a point of information, Claire did indicate a strong interest in serving on this, so if you could consider her in her absence.
That's fine. It's up to the direction of the council. I'll do whatever you want to do.
Well, I like to move to use the existing members that are on the JPA.
Do I hear a second?
We're going to make a motion for we'll make that a separate one.
What staff?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. I move staff recommendation.
Well, I'll second that we authorize the formation of a joint study group to explore the possibility.
Okay, moved and seconded. Let's vote.
The motion is unanimously carried.
We need a second motion.
Okay. As soon as the screen's clear. Okay. I move that we appoint the two existing members to the existing JPA to be on this study group.
Do we have a second? Moved and seconded. Let's vote.
That motion is unanimously carried.
Thank you very much. And that concludes new business. We'll go on to council member reports before we go into closed session. And we'll start with Angela.
Nothing to add.
Okay, Bruce?
Just one thing to report. At some point, this council is going to be facing to make a selection regarding concessionaire services at El Dorado Beach boat launch facility. There's some proposals out there, and some people have bidded for those concessionaire positions. I'm aware that the Beachcomber Invocation Membership Association that's located on 999 Lakeview Avenue has made an application for that. And my wife, who has worked there for 14 years as general manager. Therefore, I have what the law says, a remote interest, and I would have a conflict of interest. And so I'm just announcing that I will not be involved in any of those discussions or obviously voting or be involved in any way whatsoever in the selection of whoever might be that concessionaire. And I will not discuss with any of the other council members any of my views regarding that contract. And I need to announce that. And the Beachcomber is a nonprofit organization under IRS Code Section 501c3. And I think that covers it, but just so that the council's aware of that.
Okay,
Thank you.
Hal?
It was brought to my attention earlier that we have now begun enforcing property owners to clear public sidewalks that front their property, and we have cited a few people. And I've also been informed, I don't know if it's true, that RDA property, conservancy property, any publicly held property is not being held to the same standard. I just wonder if that's true, and if that ordinance required public entities to clear their public sidewalks in front of their property as well.
Stan, can you address that?
Yeah, we're making every effort to clear the city sidewalks and to the same standard that the public is being required to.
Redevelopment belongs to the state now. That's their job.
So, and I don't know, the Conservancy owns a couple of parcels. I think they own Harrison Avenue still, or maybe not.
May I provide clarification on that? Yes, no, on the Conservancy.
And they own that property.
That question was raised in the board meeting, and it was clarified that they are clearing their properties. They are under contract with someone who is sent out every day on a season-long contract to clear all their properties.
Okay.
The thing is, we'd work with the state agencies. The federal government's a different story, but I don't know that they own any property along Highway 50. But
I just want to make sure we're holding ourselves the same standard we are to the private property owners. That's all.
Okay, anything else, Al? Had a couple of quick items. Angela, I'd like to get a presentation from the Tahoe Transportation District. I'm getting some conflicting information on the ferry, the proposal. I have some serious concerns about it when I read numbers like 3,500 people daily. I'm not sure they're correct, and we don't want to discuss it now, but I'd like to get a presentation. And part of that is I'd like the Tahoe Transportation District to consider, I know you went to D.C., we want to really do the grand experiment here on transportation. Instead of running across the Lake Ferry, I suggest we come up with a program to do free South Lake Tahoe bus transportation for a couple of years. It's always been made comments by the TRPA and Transportation District that we can have a big impact in the city. So maybe perhaps we do a 2-year experiment with free bus transportation both for visitors and locals, and maybe they do the same thing on North Shore with TART. So I'd like you to see if we can agenda that or at least do a presentation. The last comment that I had, reviewing some on the Planning Commission process, and I noted in there, and I thought we had discussed this and agreed, there is no appeal process in the Planning Commission to the City Council. And I have some concerns about that, and I'd like to bring it back to Council for future discussion because we are the elected officials, and it has to do with the sign ordinance, for example. And if something gets turned down, there is no recourse for the public to come back to us who they elected. So if I have concurrence with the council, I'd like to bring that back for discussion in the future.
I'd like to see that discussed.
Okay.
I just want to clarify, on the Planning Commission, it depends on what the item is.
And this has to do with signage. I read that specifically, and that could be contentious. So I think it's important to the public that we make that final decision, and they can appeal it to us. So with that said, we'll adjourn the regular meeting, take a 5-minute break, come back for a closed session.
We've got to take public
City Attorney?
Yeah, we got to take any public comments regarding closed session items.
I know. No, it's not. Any public comment? Regarding closed session, and I forgot to ask for city clerk's comments.
To just state your next meeting is scheduled for April 3rd. However, you do have a closed session this Saturday at 10 a.m.
That's correct. City Attorney, I just got excited because we're almost done by 11.
I have none.
City Manager?
Nothing.
See, I told you guys I had no comments. All right, meeting adjourned. We'll go to closed session in 5 minutes.